Any preliminaries before we get into the request for termination and review?
Your Honor, I want to be very forthcoming on this. The original petition for termination was filed March 21st, and for some reason we didn't receive a stamped copy back from the court with the summons for quite some time, and then I wanted to amend the petition. So by the time we all got it figured out, the summons came out, I want to say, with 13 days to spare between that time to today. So I just want to bring that to the court's attention that while it was served, it wasn't timely per our court rules. So I just want to make that known.
So how do you want to proceed?
If counsel is unwilling to waive the notice defect, I would just ask that it be heard at our next hearing. And given the time today, the length of the court report, I assume we're going to need a continuation for this review and privacy planning hearing regardless. So if there's an unwillingness to waive that defect, then I would just have to ask that it be set and notice be given for the next hearing date.
All right, counselors.
Yes, Your Honor, then we're not willing to waive the defect. We would like to have service as it should happen according to the court rules. Thank you.
Okay, your position, Ms. Berger?
We are in agreement with Ms. Wilhelm, Your Honor. We're not willing to waive, and we would request that the trial part be adjourned.
Ms. Heiss.
Your Honor, I unless there can be an accelerated review, I do not join in the parents in demanding that that notice be met, and I would add that actual notice has been met. They are on actual notice with plenty enough time to prepare. So I'm requesting an accelerated review as part of that delay.
All right, we'll look for some time for that. I do think that it's important to obviously abide by the court rules, so we'll find a different date. Let's tackle that now, as well as hearing on the petition. So has the petition actually been served?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't, unless I haven't seen that all the way through there.
I believe Ms. Estes signed summons as part of the packet I had submitted last week, and I'm waiting for the CPS worker to provide Mr. Hamlin's signed summons to me. But he was served, I believe, last Tuesday.
Ms. Wilhelm, would you like to confirm that?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Hamlin was served last Tuesday.
And Ms. Berger, could you confirm for us whether or not your client has in fact received her copy of the petition requesting termination of parental rights?
I would have to ask her, Your Honor.
Okay. Deputy, should you swear in Ms. Estes for us, please? Okay, Ms. Berger, if you'd like to leave the voir dire on that issue, please.
Thank you. Ms. Estes, were you served a copy of the termination petition?
Yes.
And you had a chance to review it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. All right. So we'll have our next, again, review privacy planning hearing and the hearing on the petition, July 17th at 1:30, and I have the whole afternoon reserved for that purpose.
Your Honor, did we want to do any review today or no?
I was under the impression we were going to do a review. Are you suggesting that we forsake that for the 17th of July?
I'm not. No, I just wanted to make sure that we were able to do so.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was able to visit with all 4 children in person. There is another child in who's placed with her father in Jackson I did not see this time. These children are all in family placement. Their needs are being met in these placements. The visits for the parents were suspended after a recommendation from Brene Moore in the court granting the suspension of visits, and virtual visits were continued. We have had lots of family team meetings where all of us have been there, and I feel that there's adequate support for the parents to perform this case service plan. I'm there, I get it, it happens. I've included now in the email trail to the parents, and even I'm responding when did dad respond to this email and getting a no. I mean, so overall what I'm saying is that I think that the reasonable efforts are no longer needed in this case. I wonder even if they are creating a barrier. We are spending so much time, debating what time and when dad is going to do a virtual visit. And we had it all down and I was so clear, the 18th, I think of last month or something and I had it on my schedule because I wanted to watch him succeed and I wanted to note that we all talked about it. Then the dates got switched, so it didn't even happen. So it's really frustrating. I don't know that any reasonable efforts are going to support this family in benefiting from services. Are these capable human beings, this mother and this father? They are, but in the amount of time it's going to take them to even start to comply, let alone benefit from services, I think that I would like a period between now and then to see what they can do without the agency to blame in their mind. I'd like to see if they ever wrote their child a card, if they ever sent a pack of diapers, if they ever show up to virtual visits. You know, it's only 15 minutes. Because there are 4 little active children and that keeps them in touch with mom and dad. But when they do it, and the kids look forward to it and they like to do it. But it's a lot of work for the placement who is a relative. So, and at this point, the court report shows that there is no controversy in that placement. There's no, it's not a vulnerable placement at this time. Anything could happen. And in the event that there's a termination in this case, there is no guarantee that that's the adoptive home, but today what I'm telling you is that the placement is meeting all of the children's needs and that it's in their best interest to stay in this placement. And I'm really rooting for it to be their permanent placement in the event that the parents can't comply with their case service plan and benefit between now and that next day that we have in July. Lots of needs. There are 4 children, maybe even 4 and under or close to that. They're growing, they're healthy, they're all meeting developmental milestones. 1 minute, one's in a walker, the next minute that one's running and climbing. And there were some shoes on, I think H that mama had provided at one point, and that was nice to see. And she was really proud of her little shoes. And boy, it's just a big work in progress. Their needs are being met. I would like to see if okay, so the other thing is that I think that concludes my comments at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
I just want to review that the court, along with our attorneys, have all of the attachments that you included for today's hearing. In your cover sheet, you indicate it, including the court report, though, 27 attachments, in addition to then, which consists of about 177 pages, in addition to your social work contact logs, which is an additional 129 pages. Does that seem accurate to you?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, are there any updates or modifications that need to be made in any of those documents or your report?
Not at this time.
Since you provided this report to the court and the parties, have there been any updates or changes to the status of like the case service plan or the parents' participation?
Respondent father hasn't provided proof of any services that he's completing. He has requested that we refer him for a substance abuse evaluation through Dr. Hogan of Battle Creek Counseling Associates, which I'm working on that referral because he did not want to agree to follow the treatment plan of a substance abuse assessment through CMH. He is unable to go through any of the local providers where CMH or his insurance could cover the cost of that. And he did not want to pay out of pocket for any of the local providers. So we are trying to work on the referral to Dr. Hogan. I'm not sure when his availability is, as he only goes to Hillsdale DHS once or twice a month. And Ms. Estes is still on the waiting list for individual counseling.
And that's, I'm going to stop that question there. During this review period, has there been any substantial progress that would make you reconsider the goal of adoption for these children?
No.
And to clarify, the oldest child who's living with a non-respondent parent, that child's goal is reunification with a fit and able parent, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then adoption for the 4 youngest that are the common children of these 2 respondent parents?
Yes.
And at this point in time, would you be asking for any reconsideration of the goal change or a goal change?
No, I would continue the goal of adoption.
And during this review period, what has the parents' level of compliance and benefit from the case service been generally?
Non-compliant with poor benefit.
As it relates to some of the basic needs that the children have and the parents setting those goals, so employment and income, transportation, housing. Do the parents have any stability in those areas at this time?
Ms. Estes is residing with her father in Jackson. While the home is appropriate, due to ongoing CPS cases, it's unclear if the home would be suitable for reunification, as Ms. Estes's, as other occupants in the home have ongoing CPS matters. It's unclear if returning the children to that home would be safe for them at this time. Mr. Hamlin has not provided any rent receipts or any documentation that he is in compliance with his lease. Neither one of them have their own transportation, though Ms. Estes has been better about attending medical appointments. The past few weeks that she's resided in Jackson, her family is helping with transportation for that matter. Mr. Hamlin did make it to one medical appointment recently. Neither have provided proof of employment. Neither have provided really any documentation other than what's already been submitted in the court report.
And have, to the best of your knowledge, have either parents provided any material needs for the children?
No.
And at this time, some of the conditions that caused failure to come into care were also concerns about domestic violence. Has there any progress made in that area?
No. Law enforcement was out to the home several times during this reporting period. There was a domestic violence incident in which Ms. Estes was the aggressor, and she is working with the prosecutor's office to complete a diversion program in lieu of being formally charged. Should she not complete the program, they will move forward with domestic violence charges.
When you say that law enforcement was out at the home, can you just clarify what home you're referring to?
That was when both Ms. Estes and Mr. Hamlin were residing in the Adrian apartment on Clinton Street. Ms. Estes has since relocated to Jackson.
And you have 2 police reports in your court report, and are those the 2 incidents that are also summarized in your court report?
Yes.
And in one, was Mr. Hamlin an aggressor?
It's unclear from the police report if he was an aggressor. If he was, it wasn't towards Ms. Estes. There was, law enforcement was called as Mr. Hamlin's other children's mother was trying to pick the children up from the home. He was not relinquishing the children. There was some sort of aggression or fear of aggression between Mr. Hamlin and his other children's mother's father, I believe, who was with her. So law enforcement was contacted.
And what services have been offered to both parents as relates to domestic violence?
Individual counseling, where domestic violence is a component of that counseling, has been offered quite extensively since October. I have provided a list of providers to Mr. Hamlin for domestic violence services that are local to Adrian. If this new case service plan is adopted by the court, I will find domestic violence provider local to Jackson. Ms. Estes has not been, I have not asked Ms. Estes to complete it. Domestic violence counseling outside of her individual or conjoint therapy with Mr. Hamlin until this case service plan.
And previous individual counseling, or at least during this review period, do you have any records from a mental health professional that relational issues or domestic violence is being addressed in counseling?
No.
As it relates to substance abuse, that was also one of the conditions that caused this family to come under this court's jurisdiction. What services during this review period have been offered to, I guess, address that concern?
My supervisor participated in a joint call with Mr. Hamblin and CMH to try to assist him in completing a substance abuse assessment so that he would be eligible for local services. However, because he refused to agree to follow the treatment plan, CMH was unable to provide the assessment. He was provided with a list of providers local to Adrian that he would have to pay out of pocket for. He requested to go through Dr. Hogan, who I'm working on a referral for. That's the psychologist that goes to Hillsdale DHS once a month. It has been listed in his individual counseling that he has a substance abuse concern. Ms. Estes has listed in her individual counseling that substance abuse is a concern. She is on a waiting list at the moment, but neither have really demonstrated any sort of progress. The most recent domestic violence incident did involve alcohol. Both of them flew positive when they were given tranquilizer by law enforcement. Ms. Estes has continued to test positive for marijuana, and Mr. Hamblin is not completing all of his offered drug screens. He did refuse to complete a drug screen for CPS during this review period, and he is very hit or miss on his attendance at LDC.
I know that you were not the case manager at this point in time, but are you aware if Mr. Hamblin participated in psychological evaluation with Dr. Hogan?
Yes, he did in May, I believe.
And to the best of your knowledge, did that psychological include any substance abuse component?
I believe it mentioned it in the recommendations that he address his substance abuse in relation to parenting and individual therapy. It did not outright specify a substance abuse assessment. I do have the report if you need me to refer to it.
No, that's okay. It's already part of our record. I was just wondering if it had already been done and he was asking for it to be redone, or if it wasn't done, or is it sufficient as a true substance abuse assessment. During this review period, there have been some changes to the way you communicate with Mr. Hamblin. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And can you please just summarize for the court, so we don't have to read through everything right now, why that happened?
Mr. Hamblin is not appropriate in his communication with me via text message or phone calls. And so I was instructed by supervision to move forward with email communication with Mr. Hamblin. He felt during a family team meeting held in mid-April, he felt that our communication had become stagnant. Mr. Hamblin felt that our communication had become stagnant. So between that and then his inappropriate language being used, I am communicating with him via email at this time, where all of the legal counsel can be CC'd on that communication.
And you in fact did provide an email notice to him to that effect, correct?
Yes.
And all counsel was in fact CC.
Yes.
And has he replied to any of those emails?
A couple of them, he had replied directly to me asking further questions. And when I would respond back to him, I would again CC all of the legal counsel.
As it relates to parenting time during this review period, is it fair to say that there's a difference between how parenting time is offered to Ms. Estes versus Mr. Hamblin?
Both of them were offered in-person visits and both were offered video visits. Mr. Hamblin chose not to participate in his in-person visits. whereas Ms. Estes did mostly participate in them. For video visits, Mr. Hamlin's participation is more at like a 50-50. Ms. Estes has been, again, has participated more than he has.
And is there any requirement to confirm parenting time for either in person or video?
They have to confirm by 12 p.m. I don't believe Ms. Estes was being held to the confirm for in-person visits, as her attendance was rarely in question. When we switched to video visits, I did send out an email to both respondent parents and all legal counsel that they had to confirm with me by 12 p.m. the day of each visit.
And you've included Ms. Moore's recommendations about parenting time. Is it in, and through council, you also put in a request to suspend all parenting time, correct?
Yes.
Do you have a recommendation as to parenting time today, whether that should be solely virtual or no parenting time at all, or back to in person?
Frankly, the only child that appears to be benefiting or actively participating in the video visits is Brooklyn. That's because she does already have an established bond with both parents. The younger children, it's very difficult to really even get them to focus on the computer screen or the phone. It's unclear to see if they are really benefiting from the video visits or if it's just further causing disruption and acting out. I do not believe in-person visits are appropriate at this time for the 4 younger children, as there are significant safety concerns when there is parental participation. There's safety concerns from both parents. Ms. Estes is more physical and emotional safety concerns, whereas Mr. Hamlin's is really his lack of participation and involvement with the children. And because the children do tend to have behaviors, especially Brooklyn and Abby, I don't think in-person visits are appropriate at this time. I don't really think the video visits are appropriate either for any of the younger children, but Brooklyn's the only one that gets anything out of it, and it does cause behaviors afterwards. They're very chaotic. You can see them become extremely hyper. They're getting very wound up for these short video visits, and then it causes more stress on the caregivers afterwards. And even just during the 30-minute chunk of time for both parents, I'm exhausted and I'm not physically in the home for all of them. I don't think it's a good idea for them to continue having visits.
And as it relates to this current placement, back to parenting time for the oldest child, how is parenting time handled for that child, Ms. Estes?
That is handled directly between Ms. Estes and Mr. Duran, the non-respondent parent that Jade is placed with. They kind of just worked out when Ms. Estes would see Jade. It is a lot more frequent now that she is living in Jackson. They're really maybe 3 blocks apart. We do have a safety plan in place that Ms. Estes's father is not to be around Jade, and the visits are not to occur in Ms. Estes's home, as she does reside with her father. Mr. Duran has been in charge of determining who would supervise the visits. Prior to the safety plan, it was Ms. Estes's father. With the safety plan, Mr. Duran indicated it will probably be himself or another babysitter, and that they would do visits in his home or out in the community, such as McDonald's or the park.
Do you have any concerns about that parenting time continuing for that child?
I don't have the same safety concerns, as Jade is a little bit older. She's not climbing on tables or running in the street. When it's Ms. Estes and Jade, there's not other children around for one of the children to be played with a little more than the other children. I don't have the same level of concern with that, so long as they do continue to be supervised, and Mr. Duran has agreed with that as well.
In your report, I believe you mentioned assisting Mr. Dern in filing custody in Jackson County. Or
Yes.
getting that paperwork ready.
Yes.
Give me an update on that.
We completed all of the paperwork through Michigan Legal Help website during my March home visit. I provided 3 sets of copies to him during my April home visit of that paperwork, about 33 pages, I think. He did take it to the Jackson County front of the courthouse, and they handed him a piece of paper with a list of documents that they wanted. When I did my home visit last week, no, yesterday, sorry, we pulled out the Jackson County requested documents. We updated Ms. Estes's address on the forms, and he was going to be submitting them Thursday or Friday of this week.
As it relates to the children's well-being, there seems to be a lot of doctor's appointments for the 4 younger ones. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And your report indicates that the parents have minimal participation in those medical appointments.
yes, Mr. Hamblin and Ms. Estes participated in Brooklyn's dental appointment, I want to say March 6th. There have been about 10 medical appointments during this review period. Mr. Hamblin has attended, I think there's been 11, as we had one after I submitted the report, but before today. So Mr. Hamblin has attended 2 out of 11 appointments. Ms. Estes has attended, I believe, 3 out of 11 appointments. And it's only been since the termination petition was provided.
Are there any other services that the department can offer these parents to help remedy the barriers to reunification?
Not that I'm aware of. The department can't provide employment. We can't facilitate housing for forever. We can't force the parents to attend counseling. I mean, I can provide resources, I can write referrals, but if the parents don't want to do it, the kids have been in care for about 21 months now, I believe, and we're still facing the same barriers.
Is there anything that you would really like the court to note from your report or the attachments?
I don't think anything specifically.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of this witness at this time. We would move to admit the court report with the attachments. And if the court would still like the social work contact logs, for that to be admitted as well.
Yes, Your Honor, I would like the social contact logs admitted, and no objection to, and yeah, the materials to be admitted. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Berger?
No objection. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it cut out just a little early.
I think my voice cut out, Your Honor. I have no objection. Thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
I have received and reviewed those exhibits. For my purpose, the social work contact logs seem redundant to me, but the court report, I think, covers the same thing. So on that, I would just assume have the social work contact logs as we needed. I don't think they add, so that's my contribution.
All right, well, I'm gonna receive those in addition to the exhibits.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Hamlin, I normally can see you, but for some reason I can't quite see you today, but
Oh, that's my fault. I'll get that arranged for you.
Ms. Hamlin, can you, you stated that there are some concerns regarding Ms. Estes's in-person parenting time. Is that correct?
Yes,
Can you expound upon that, please?
there are numerous physical and emotional well-being safety concerns. Ms. Estes has a very difficult time getting the children in and out of the vehicle without the children running through the parking lot. On numerous occasions, more counseling staff has had to chase after the children, or the relative caregiver is chasing after the children. Ms. Estes usually does not do the chasing after the children. The children wander throughout the building. They try to leave the room that they're in. They are climbing on tables. Ms. Estes is not providing discipline or redirection, and is very heavily reliant upon the supervisor of the visits to maintain the children's physical safety. We attempted community visits. We attempted 2 of them and then returned back to the office as the community visits caused even further safety concerns. There is a lot of concern that Ms. Estes shows favoritism towards Brooklyn and negatively affects Abigail's mental and emotional well-being. Her division of time between the 2 children is not even. Ms. Estes was offered 3 individual visits with Abby during this reporting period to try to improve that bond. And she only attended 1 of them.
Were those in person or were those virtual?
Those were in person. The first visit, she canceled I believe, morning of, as she had thought she was visiting individually with Brooklyn. And when she was told, no, it was Abby, she canceled the visit. The second visit, she confirmed, and then was a no-show at the office when Abby arrived, which is greatly upsetting to young children. And then she did attend the third visit.
Okay. And do you have an opinion on if anyone would be able to, I guess, control that amount of children?
I think it can be done. It requires having a strong parent-child bond with the children, but it also requires a significant amount of parenting skills, the ability to multitask, the ability to maintain structure and organization. Without those abilities or that level of a relationship with the children, it is complete chaos.
Since leaving her relationship with Mr. Hamblin, have you noticed any changes in her?
Ms. Estes has attempted to re-engage with services in the Jackson area. She has followed through on completing an intake for individual counseling, though the actual counseling hasn't started yet. She has attended most of the video visits offered. She has looked for employment, though she hasn't obtained any yet. She is maintaining more communication with me and has sent letters to the children through me. She's demonstrated improvement, but it's only been the past few weeks, and I don't know if it will continue. Her pattern shows that it will not continue. I'm hopeful that she can maintain her distance from him and really make a fresh start for herself, but it's unclear if that's going to be possible.
To the best of your knowledge, has Miss Estes ever attempted to have a break from Mr. Hamblin or to plan separately from him?
There was a no contact order for a chunk of time in, I believe, November and December, in which Ms. Estes stated that she was separated from him and that she was no longer living with him. And that was later reported to be false, that they were living together. Since coming on the case in October, I think this is the furthest she's been separated from him. But looking back over the case history, it's very unclear if she'll maintain that separation.
Has she completed any requested drug screens?
She has completed all of the drug screens that I've provided in person. We are working to get her set up with forensic fluids random screens in the Jackson area. But when I've done home visits or met with her in person at medical appointments, she has completed drug screens for me.
Okay. And is there any step that Miss Estes can take to, in your eyes, regain her in-person visits?
Could arrange to meet with staff of more counseling services and really listen when they voice their concerns about her in-person visits and try to determine what steps she could do differently, and really partner with them, possibly through a parent coaching session more than just supervising a visit, to determine if she can maintain the children's safety during visits.
And would you recommend that that be with someone like Brene Moore or someone like a therapist?
I would recommend someone like Brene Moore, who can provide therapeutic visitation with additional staffing in the room to assist in maintaining the children's safety until Ms. Estes is able to demonstrate that she can do that herself. There's just a lot of concern that is in regards to the children's physical and emotional well-being during her visits.
So should Ms. Estes reach out to Ms. Moore's office, or should she begin that with her own counselor?
I think it would be wise to reach out to Ms. Moore's office, and then once she does actually start counseling, she could sign a release of information and they would be able to communicate together to really try to bring Ms. Estes the most beneficial services to improve her skills.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time. Thank you.
So, Ms. Hamlin, first I would like to talk about if you're aware of Mr. Hamlin's new position that he has started.
He's not informed me of anything.
And I also would like to ask if you are, to your knowledge, is Mr. Hamlin still living at the Clinton address?
I believe so. Again, he's not provided any documentation.
Okay, and still, I know last time we had talk of the eviction. Have you ever seen any eviction notices or anything of that sort?
No, but I've also never seen a rent receipt showing paid in full.
Okay, but a rent receipt showing paid in full would not be the same as an eviction notice or the lack thereof, would it?
So the department, his inability to provide a rent receipt showing that he is paid in full and on time with his rent is a significant concern that his housing is unstable and on the path for eviction.
But you're not aware that he is actually in eviction proceedings?
I'm unaware.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to talk a minute about medical appointments for the children. You mentioned that there were 11. I do have a list that you provided Mr. Hamlin on 3/6. Had that list been updated?
I sent a text message and email when there was an added well child exam for Gideon. Everything else has been off of that list.
Thank you. That clears it up for me. Thank you. Got a couple more here. Regarding the substance abuse assessment, so Mr. Hamlin has agreed to do that assessment, hasn't he?
He's agreed to do the assessment with Dr. Hogan because it does not require him agreeing to actual treatment services that CMH would require.
And has he, on many occasions, he has contacted you asking you for help with transportation to Dr. Hogan because he is in Hillsdale, is that correct?
He's asked me once.
Well, he's asked on 4/24 in the email that has been set up for him. And
Objection, Your Honor, is counsel testifying right now? I don't know what the question is.
well, the question is,
If you could give us a little bit more information, I'm assuming you're laying foundation for your question, but are you referencing the social work context log?
well, I am referencing the social work contact logs. According to the social work contact logs, there have been 3 requests by Mr. Hamlin for transportation.
He asked in one email for transportation to Dr. Hogan's. He asked in another email about a medical appointment, but I'm unaware of him asking for transportation specifically for Dr. Hogan other than the one email I'm referencing.
Are you able to provide transportation for him or help him with transportation for that appointment?
Yes, we would provide gas cards.
And any other type of transportation that could be offered or just gas cards? I mean, they're good.
At this time, it would just be guest
So
cards.
he would request those for the visit.
He would need to contact me 48 hours prior to any need for them, 48 business hours. And yes, it would be provided based 65 cents per mile.
With respect to domestic violence, you stated that Mr. Undirect English, you stated that both parents, but I'm talking only about mine, that Mr. Hamlin was addressing domestic violence in counseling. Is that your knowledge?
In the recommendations from Dr. Hogan from the psychological, it was suggested that domestic violence be addressed in individual counseling as well as conjoint therapy. At this time, his newest individual counseling provider can work it into his counseling, but recommends that he do an actual program for it.
And part of your exhibit is a counseling services assessment and treatment plan report from Barb Brick, is that correct?
Yes, CPI.
From who? I'm sorry.
Barb Brick, B-R-I-C-K, it is Brick, like Brick, right?
Yes, she's through CPIF Resource Solutions.
And in that report, Barb Brick does note that what her weekly visiting counseling sessions with Mr. Hamlin would be that, and I will quote it, engaged in addiction and parenting education. Does that sound correct to you?
Yes, that is what was in the initial referral to her.
Okay, and so has she since then said that she would address domestic violence as well? It's just not in the report, is that correct?
Yes, it was in an email that was sent to all legal counsel and Mr. Hamlin that she can discuss it during sessions, but again, she recommends he do an actual program for it.
And have you provided him with referrals for those programs?
I've provided him with the information to participate in services.
And so are you referring to some of those letters, like say, for instance, the 315, the letter that you wrote on March 15th, where you list some services and give him some phone numbers?
No, I'm referring to the email that went out, I believe within a week or so of our last FTM, that specified a specific provider with their phone number, their rates, and their email address.
Has Mr. Hamlin reached out to you recently asking you for a referral for domestic violence?
I believe so. I'm working on his substance abuse assessment referral, and we'll add that to the list. I will be frank, I don't know if the department can pay for that. I don't know if that's a contract that we have. I was under the impression that that is something Mr. Hamlin would have to self-pay.
Okay, but you are looking into that for him.
Yes.
No further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
We're almost 20 months or so into this case, and Mr. Duran has not had the custody papers filed. Would you be willing to forward whatever information you get right away if you find out that there's a barrier or that he has filed for custody?
Yes. I believe he's filing Thursday or Friday. He indicated that the filing fee is a barrier. I've given him information on applying for food stamps, which he would qualify for, and that would waive the filing fee. I also indicated that he can provide the receipt to me and I can try to reimburse them through Meyer gift cards. That was something we had spoken of at yesterday's visit.
Does he have supportive family that listens to your advice as well and can support him when you're not there?
I've met with his mom a couple of times. She was not there yesterday though.
In your report, there's an absenteeism report regarding the child that's in his care, in Javante's care.
Yes.
And on that report, every absence is reported as AM and PM. So technically it looks like there's a double reporting. Do you agree?
Yes.
So if there's 40 absenteeisms, if it's AM and PM on the same day, really we could be looking at 20 absenteeisms.
Yes.
And do you know of any enforcement action in her school that would indicate that that's a critical amount of absentees?
They've not provided me with anything, no.
These handwritten safety plans from the mother, is this something you helped her write?
No, it was something she'd come up with on her own. I provided her a list of plans that she needed to create as recommended by her psyche doc.
Have you counseled with her after these were written to tell her if these are satisfactory or not
No, I was waiting until she had a couple parenting classes under her belt at her newest provider, and had planned to try to meet with her and her therapist to really go over the psych eval recommendations and how the safety plans would go into those recommendations.
Okay, that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Redirect?
I have none at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any recross, Ms. Berger or Ms. Wilhelm?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
No, nothing. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. We return to your seat. Any other witnesses, Ms. Thomas?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Ms. Berger?
Ms. Estes, would you like to testify today?
Yeah.
All right, she has been sworn already, actually. Thank you, Deputy Yates. You may proceed with your questions when you're ready, Ms. Berger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Estes, you heard Ms. Hamlin's testimony regarding your in-person visits. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And do you agree with her evaluation of those?
No.
And can you tell the court why?
Well, I believe that I was misled with a few of my visits. And also, I believe that Brené's office is making it sound a lot worse for me to rely on help with the kids. So I don't believe it's fair that my visits be suspended due to me needing help with all 4 of the kids.
Okay. And what things do you think that you were misled about?
So like the individual visits with Abby, I was first told that when we started the individual visits, my first visit was going to be with Brooklyn since she wasn't going to be in school. And the day of the visit, they tricked me into it being Abby, so the visit was canceled. The one after that was supposed to be with Brooklyn as well, and they changed it to Abby. So I think they didn't tell me that the visit with Abby was to try and form a better bond with her. They told me that the visit was going to be with Brooklyn.
Okay. And why did you think that you were doing individual visits with Brooklyn?
I knew that they were going to be with all of the kids. I just thought that Brooklyn was going to be first because she wasn't going to be in school.
Okay. So you mean like earlier in the time of the day?
No, I mean like that day. It was supposed to be on a Friday. Brooklyn usually has every other Friday off. So when they told me, they actually asked me who I wanted to do my first visit with one-on-one, and I said Brooklyn because she wasn't going to be in school. And they agreed with it. And when they switched it to Abby, it kind of upset me and made me think that I was going to miss my one-on-one with Brooklyn because she would be in school the next time.
Okay, can you slow down a little bit, Ms. Estes, please? Thank you.
So, did you at any point get any individual visits with any of your children?
I did get one with Abby.
Okay. And would you like more individual visits?
Yes.
And have you been doing virtual visits since your in-person visits got changed?
Yes.
And what do those look like?
They are very wound up and kind of all over the place, but I do believe that it benefits the kids to be able to talk to me and see me.
And do you believe that you're still quite bonded with your children?
Yes.
And would you ask the court to reinstate your in-person visits today?
Yes.
Okay. And you heard Miss Hamlin testify that you did re-engage with some services. Is that correct?
Yes.
What services have you re-engaged since moving to Jackson?
So it did take me a little bit of time to get into therapy, but I do have my first therapy appointment with Jennifer from Irwin Counseling here in Jackson on Thursday. And then I'm also doing parenting classes through Family Services and Children's Aid.
Okay. And what did those parenting classes look like?
They are an 8-week course, 2 hours a week. And I mean, it's just intense parenting classes. It's very in person too. I like it better than when I was in Adrian. So.
Okay. And you understand that at this time, the goal for your children is adoption?
Yes.
And if reunification is not an option for your children, would you ask the court to consider the goal of guardianship?
Yes.
And can you explain a little bit more why you would prefer guardianship to adoption?
While I would have hope that I could turn my life around in order to get my kids back eventually.
Okay. And if a guardianship were ordered, who would you prefer the guardian to be?
Christina,
And you believe that she would support the children and any potential relationship with you?
do I believe that she would support the children's relationship with me?
Yes.
No.
Okay. And she would hold you accountable until you, like what you said, got your life together?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to update the court on today?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions for this witness, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Wilhelm?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
Ms. Estes, can you hear me?
Yes,
In your safety plans that you made for yourself, I read something that you have lots of family support in Jackson. Did I read that right?
yes,
And are those family supports, have you given the names and addresses and everything that's needed to the department about those supports?
I wasn't aware that the courts needed it.
Well, if you're gonna rely on them, I wondered if we would need to check on those folks so that we could know who you're relying on. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So if you want us to consider those as important support to you, would you be willing to provide their information to the agency?
yes,
So you said something about maybe if you worked and you would have them to rely on for childcare, for example?
Yeah.
Okay, that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Any redirect, Ms. Berger?
Not this time, Your Honor, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Estes, counselors?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Any other witnesses, Ms. Berger?
None, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Wilhelm?
Yes, Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. Hamlin to the stand.
Mr. Hamlin, come on up to our witness stand.
Mr. Hamlin, I would like to direct your attention to the video visitation schedules that you have received in this case. And I would like to talk first about the first one that you received, which was on March 24th. Do you recall that one?
Yes,
And without looking at it, do you recall whether or not April 18th was on that list?
April 18th was on that list.
And what happened on April 18th when you, did you confirm that visit first of all?
I did.
And then
yes.
what happened?
I confirmed to Stephanie and she texted back and said that there wasn't a visit that day. And I was confused because I saw it on the first one and then she directed me to an email to a new schedule that I haven't seen yet.
And do you recall the date of the new email, the new schedule? Would that have been the same day for 18?
I don't recall the exact date.
It was the same day though that you confirmed, correct?
It was, I believe it was within a day or two, or if not on the same day.
Were you ever informed before that time that you were not going to be having that visit on 4/18?
No.
But you did confirm for it?
I did.
And it did not happen?
It did.
Let's talk about another day. 3/28, you had a video visit scheduled and it was your very first one.
Yes.
Did you confirm for that day?
I did confirm. Yeah, I got on the Zoom because it was supposed to be right after Caitlin's visit with the kids at Bernie Moore's. And I got on Zoom, but nobody was there. I wasn't let into any kind of meeting or anything.
Did you ask of anyone what might have happened?
When Caitlin came back from visit that day, she told me that the kids had left right after visit.
After her visit?
After her visit, yes.
And your visit would follow?
Yeah, it was supposed to follow, yes.
Did you inform Ms. Hamlin that you had attempted to attend that visit?
I did message her, yeah.
Did you receive any response from that?
No, I did not.
Let's talk about a visit that you had with your two sons. That would have been March 17th,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Why do you remember that date so well?
It's my daughter's birthday, Abby's birthday.
Okay, so was there some talk back and forth about whether or not Abby could attend that visit?
Yes.
And can you go ahead and tell the court what happened? Tell her in your own words.
So about a week before the visit was supposed to happen, I asked Stephanie about having Abby there, because I knew Brooklyn was gonna be there, she was in school. But I asked Stephanie about Abby being there, and Stephanie said that there had been plans made or something like that for a while now, and that she would not be able to be there. And I messaged back, it's her birthday, it's only an hour, and I should be able to see her on her birthday. So I talked with my mom. My mom said that she could free up time around that, she could free up an hour of Abby's day. And then I also spoke with my aunt, and she said that she was flexible too. So when I messaged Stephanie back and told her, I just got off the phone with my mom and everything, she said that she talked to her the day before or something, and it's still just going to be the boys.
Okay, now, do you, on your visitation schedules, do you have any input on what times they occur or days they occur?
No, not those.
Not on times?
No.
Or not on days?
I think I might have like the general time. I think I made it to where like it was in the morning, because at that time I was working a little later in the day.
And Abby does not attend school, does she?
No, she doesn't.
So she, except for having a birthday party, could have attended.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When you do have visits with your children, do they recognize you?
Yes.
How do you tell?
They'll say dad. The only one that doesn't is Gideon, and he was really young when he was close to my mom. So I know that's like a work in progress. But the three older ones, they all recognize me. They all know I'm dad. Every time I see him on the phone, they're daddy, fighting over the phone and stuff. So
There's lots of talk in this case about you're not visiting with the children. Can you tell us why you refuse to have visits with Brene Moore at Brene Moore's office?
Yeah, so I refused visits at Brene Moore's office because the supervisor was going to be Janice. And a couple weeks prior, Caitlin had a visit where she got a report for her, and Caitlin swears that the report was lying, and the report made her sound abusive towards the children. And the story that Caitlin told me sounds a lot more believable than what's on the report. And at that point, I didn't want to have visits with Janice because I'd rather not see my kids than go and have a visit and have a report that says I'm abusive towards them or something like that. And I don't want somebody to lie on me. So that's why I forfeited my visit under duress. I didn't want to be. I don't trust Janice.
And how do you know? Caitlin told you that.
Yeah. Caitlin told me the story, and it just sounds way more believable than Caitlin, defying a direct order from the supervisor and then doing it again. She's been about her kids. She's always made it to visitations. She was drug tested. She was on top of everything. So I don't see why she would put herself in that position to, look like that.
And you didn't want to have reports like that.
I didn't want to have reports like that.
No.
No. And I had already gotten reports where things were kind of misled and not true or not the whole truth. I've already had reports from Brene Moore's office like that. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Now you're referring to reports that would have been from last November, is that correct?
Yeah.
What reports have you gotten from the visits that you've done in this reporting period?
I haven't gotten any visitation reports.
So there are no visitation reports available?
No.
Have you asked for visitation reports?
I've asked several times.
And have you received any responses as to would you be getting some or why you
The
weren't
first
getting any?
The first visitation report was on the 17th. I asked for that one, and Stephanie messaged back. It's going to take some time. She's got to write the report and then she'll get it to me, but she never did.
So 317 was the first visit, and you still haven't received a report.
Yeah.
Would reports be helpful to you?
I think so. Yeah.
How so?
It'll give me insight, on different people's perspectives, on how I parent, what they see. Could be helpful.
You could improve.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you still interested in having virtual visits with your children?
Definitely.
And are you receiving any reports for those?
No.
Are they is there any guidance offered during those that could be helpful as when you have the face-to-face visits? They're different, I know.
I think it'd be helpful as it, being able to show that there is a bond. The kids, when they first saw me, they were saying daddy and, fighting for the phone, or, they do know me. We do have that bond, because it has been said that I don't have a bond with my kids. So in that aspect, I think it would be helpful to be able to report those things. But I mean, as far as anything else, it's a 15-minute, pretty much saying I love you and hi the whole time.
Okay. And let's was there anything else you'd like the court to know about your visiting?
Well, with the 317 visit, I adamantly, showed and told Stephanie that I wanted to see Abby on that day, and I was very, very upset that I couldn't. And then in one of the court reports, it said that I chose to only visit with 2 of my children that day. And I just think that's ridiculous. I didn't choose to only visit with. I mean, and it was in there to make it sound bad, like I picked and choose my kids. Like I didn't do that. I wanted to see Abby, but it was put in there that I only chose to visit with 2 of my kids. And
that's what was offered to you was the 2 children.
Yeah.
You didn't have a choice.
I didn't have a choice. Yeah.
Anything else on that?
It's just I really want to continue my virtual visits. I love getting to see the kids. That's it.
Well, let's then move on to your employment. Where are you employed now?
I'm currently employed at Ontropolis.
And you're just in orientation now, correct?
I have to complete a training class before I can start full time, which I was supposed to be today, but I just haven't.
But it will be full-time employment?
Yes, 40 hours.
And how about housing? Are you in the process of being evicted?
I am not in the process of being evicted.
What is going on?
I am behind a few months, but me and my landlord are working it out.
So do you make payments to him?
I do. Yes.
How often do you make them?
Probably like twice a week, or once every 2 weeks.
And with your substance abuse assessment, you're willing to have that done with Dr. Haugen, is that correct?
Yes.
And in your memory of it, how many times have you asked for assistance with transportation?
To the assessment, or just in general?
Well, assessment.
To the assessment, I believe I asked twice.
Have you ever had a response to it until today?
As far as transportation, no.
And on the medical appointments, what is the main problem for why you don't attend more of those?
The main issue is half of them are in Ann Arbor, and I don't have a way to get to Ann Arbor. And then the other problem, I guess, are the ones here in town. I can make most of the time, but sometimes, it's interfering with something else I have going on. Whether it be an interview or counseling appointment or something like that.
Do you think those are important?
Yeah, I do.
What happened on the last medical appointment that you attended and who was that for?
The last appointment I attended was for Abby. It was her, it was a 3-year checkup. It went good. I got there, walked in, got to see Abby for the first time in months. As soon as she saw me, she was like, "Daddy," it was awesome. But got there, then Stephanie came, and we went back and did the appointment, and then I left.
Have you asked for transportation to attend appointments, the medical appointments for the children?
I did email Stephanie last week asking about transportation to Brooklyn's appointment in Ann Arbor on the 23rd. I haven't heard anything back yet.
What is your general view of Ms. Hamlin's responsiveness to you in your requests?
I think she just does enough to cover her butt.
You have requested domestic violence referral, correct?
I have not,
You have not received any.
no referrals, no.
You have requested for a long time help with parenting ed online. Has that been forthcoming?
No, I haven't.
Have you heard anything about that?
I have not.
Mr. Hamlin, what would be your view if the court were willing to entertain a juvenile guardianship for your children in this case?
I would be for it. Just like Caitlin said, it does give you that hope that later down the road, you know, if you get your life together, then you could always come back to court. And I think that it would open up, you know, in between that time, it would open up opportunities to be able to see the children, you know, with my mom. I mean, I'm happy where they're at right now. I mean, I think they're getting, you know, the best that they can.
In a guardianship case, if guardianship were granted, you understand that your mother would have full authority to disallow visitation.
I understand that, yeah.
And what would happen if you wanted to visit the children and she said no?
It wouldn't be any different from how it is now.
Okay, so now what?
So I guess at that point, if she said no, I would just continue to. I don't know what rights I would have with her having guardianship, if I had any at all, as far as like visitations and stuff. But at that point, I just, you know, focus on myself to get my things in order, and then come back to court.
Do you know what your mom's view is of when and if you would ever be able to visit your children? Your mother's own view. Do you know what it is?
She just wants me sober, working.
Are you sober?
I am sober.
How many days?
Last time I had a drink was Easter.
And if Dr. Howing does say that you need to have substance abuse counseling specifically, are you willing to do that?
Yeah.
And how about AA?
I'm willing to do AA. I really don't find AA beneficial for me. I've done it in the past. And there's other things that I can do besides AA.
You're going to be willing to follow everything Dr. Howing says.
Yes, yes.
And you have no problems whatsoever with your mom, if she were guardian of your children, holding you accountable for things that you have to do
I wouldn't have a problem.
and helping provide for the children if and when necessary. Is there anything else you'd like for the court to know?
No.
All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Questions, Ms. Thomas? Ms. Nice.
Oh, yeah. What size shoes is Abby in?
Probably like 10 or 11s now.
What size diapers is Dakota in?
Last time I knew he was in a size 7.
You said that there's AA that you can be doing, but it isn't helpful, right?
I have found that AA in the past has not been helpful to me, no.
So you know that it's available?
I do know it's available, yes.
How is it available? Where do you go? What do you do for AA?
There's a weekly meeting at LDC where I do my drug tests.
Do you do your drug tests?
Every now and then, yeah.
All right, so that's the only meeting, one meeting a week is available to you for AA?
In my immediate like walking area, yeah.
Not online? There's nothing available online?
I haven't checked online.
All right, and then there's other things that you can do, like what?
I can do like meditation or find some, there's this thing called Celebrate Recovery. It's more spiritual than AA. AA is based more on the Bible and God and everything. Celebrate Recovery is more spiritual, and I think that would be something like.
Have you been there?
I've been looking into it.
Been looking into it. How long, we've been in this case, 20 months?
I just heard about it like a week and a half ago.
Okay, but you knew about AA
Yeah, I do know about AA.
and you don't go.
I don't go to AA.
Why not?
Because Easter was the first time that I had a drink this year. And I feel like I did have an alcohol problem. I committed myself. I went 4 months without having a drink. And then I had a drink on Easter, and then now I haven't drank since. So I I strongly believe in being able to, do this myself and not have to have a crutch or, go listen to a bunch of people tell drinking stories and war stories and stuff. But that stuff doesn't benefit me.
So what are you doing that does benefit you?
Staying busy.
You're not employed yet, right? You haven't started your training?
I did do some training last week. There was a part of the training that I wasn't able to complete last week. So I was gonna finish that up today, but it's gonna have to get scheduled out probably until next week again.
What interfered with your training last week?
It was just one of the people that did the safety course wasn't there that day.
All right, so you're not doing recovery for substance use disorder, but you'll agree that that is in your case service plan, correct?
What is?
Substance use evaluation and follow recommendations.
Yeah.
And do you recall on May 10th receiving an email from Stephanie Hamlin?
No.
Okay.
Not offhand.
If I would refresh your memory to say that it was titled, please review and provide feedback on a quarterly parent agency treatment plan. Is that how?
Did they come with that PDF of like about me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
All right, have you responded to that yet?
I have not responded to that. I
Okay.
haven't been able to look through all.
So you haven't looked through that to be able to respond. How about, we had a family team meeting and we were all there and we talked about you were gonna have a video visit on April 18th. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And
Think so.
I specifically asked you to be successful and let me know any barriers you had to making that happen, right?
I don't remember you saying that specifically, but I'm sure. Yeah.
So when it didn't happen, you didn't let me know either, right?
I did not let you know.
And also what you're telling us today is that there was an email for you on that day or some other day that you didn't open, that you didn't look at, so you didn't know that it was missed, correct? That was changed
I didn't know it was changed.
because you didn't open your email, right?
Right.
What's your barrier to opening your email?
I don't stare at my phone all the time. I don't get on the computer all the time. I check it every so often. I didn't know that there was going to be a new video visit schedule until Stephanie messaged me and said that I take notice to the email I just sent. So I went and looked at it. Sure enough, it's a new schedule.
So Abby's birthday, that visit on 3/17,
What about it?
you're saying that for you wanted to have that visit, is that right?
I wanted to have that business.
Can you articulate for me why Abby should have had that visit from her perspective?
Because she gets to see her dad.
And what does dad mean to Abby?
You have to ask her.
So you said you have a bond with her,
I
right?
do.
In your parenting education, have you talked about bonds being healthy and bonds being not healthy?
I haven't got that far in my therapy yet.
What are you hoping? Okay. So we're 20 months in. What's your barrier to getting parenting ed done?
For right now, I mean, just the chaoticness of my schedule to be able to like set something. I was looking into, Stephanie did say something to me about the MSU extension, which would be online. Never really heard anything back from her about it. I did sign up for CPC classes back in late March, I think. And then I had an interview on the day I was supposed to start, and then I had another interview, and then like I just kind of got behind me. And then I started working at Taco Bell. And I just couldn't make their set schedule that they had set for me. So
what I'm hoping to have you find out in those classes is your story through the eyes of your kids. How does it matter to the kids that you're not able to have in-person visits?
well, I remember when I was a kid and my dad not being there, it made me question a lot. It made me question, what did I do wrong? Or why doesn't he like me? Or just a lot of insecurities came from that. And I also remember, when I did get to see my dad, I mean, it was, I don't know, that feeling. I never really even knew my dad that well, but whenever I saw him, it was just a feeling of like, I don't know, like acceptance or something. It's just a good feeling. And I think that's important for the kids.
Is it important enough that you should be going to AA and doing some visits and doing some parenting time, a few things like that, so you can give that to the kids?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is.
But you're still not.
I'm looking into it.
So you're behind in your rent. How are you paying any rent?
I do odd jobs.
So if someone is trying to help you succeed in your parent agent, your plan to become reunited with the kids. What help is it that you need? Is it the agency providing help? Is that what you need?
The biggest thing I need is transportation. Seems like one of my main barriers is transportation. Getting to appointments, getting to assessments and all these things that I have to do. I have to keep in mind that it's got to be in like walking distance for me. Because I don't have a brother or sister that drives or can give me rides. My mom can't give me rides.
You have brothers and sisters that drive.
Um,
They're not willing to drive you.
my sister doesn't drive. She doesn't have a car. It's her boyfriend's car.
So if these children are in your care, how are you gonna get them to their appointments in Ann Arbor?
Well, that's for right now. They're in a good spot because I don't have transportation.
But we're
That's-
20 months in, how long is it gonna take?
I
you
wouldn't
to
be
get
able
there?
to transport them right now if they were in my care.
Okay, maybe mom would help you.
Maybe my mom would probably help me, yes. Or my aunt.
Okay, you went to this 3-year-old checkup for Abby with her doctor, correct?
Yes,
What was the doctor's conclusions?
healthy.
And did he order any follow-up testing?
No.
So there's no neurology test that's pending.
Well, he didn't order it.
Who ordered that?
Probably her neurologist.
Do you call those folks and look through the records and see what's going on?
I don't have the numbers for them.
What's your barrier to finding those numbers?
I guess there isn't a barrier to find those numbers.
Now, you did get a whole bunch of, I saw a whole list of domestic violence counseling choices that you have, correct?
Yes,
So you're waiting for a referral. Why is that? Because that pays for it or something?
right. I don't have the money to pay out of pocket for those domestic violence programs.
How are you paying for rent then?
Sacrificing things.
So you do have some places that you could go for domestic violence help. You've seen a list, right?
I've seen the list, yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Can you redirect?
No, thank you.
Okay, any requests, Ms. Berger, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seats. Any other witnesses, Ms. Wilhelm?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
I have no witnesses and no closing statement, Your Honor.
Any closing comments, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the elements of these cases that I often cite to is that it's also incumbent and equally incumbent on the parent to comply with and benefit from their case service plan as much as it is on the agency or the department to provide reasonable efforts to address the conditions that cause the children to come into care. In this case, yes, we had a caseworker in the past, maybe did not have the best professional etiquette here, but we still had hundreds of pages of case logs. We still had several referrals, several efforts being put forward. Since October, we've had a very competent caseworker on this case who has gone above and beyond offering reasonable efforts to help address the conditions that cause the children to come into care. What we don't have, we have over 300 pages of documentation from the caseworker. What we don't have is anything from the parents showing that they're equally invested in reunifying with their children. Because of that, we have filed the termination petition. And under MCL 712A.19B subsection 4, I believe that during the pendency of the termination hearing, we can request and the court may order that parenting time be suspended pending that termination hearing. And at this time, given the reports from the supervisors regarding the concerns of safety and the mental and emotional health of the children, we do ask that this court suspend parenting time moving forward. We also ask that the reasonable efforts in this case be shifted solely to the permanency plan for adoption as relates to the 4 younger children. Ms. Heist's questioning, I think for Mr. Hamlin in particular, really highlights the fact that the children were removed, I believe, in August, early August of 2021. So we are almost at that 2-year point. And there is no urgency for the parents to have stabilization throughout this case. Basic needs, housing, transportation, income have all been issues the entire time. We've had inconsistent participation. We've had lack of acknowledgement of what behaviors and conditions the parents bring to the table that are causing their children to be in this situation. And it is not fair to the children to continue to wait for their parents to get it together. There's been some talk if the court doesn't terminate, do you support juvenile guardianship? I mean, as this court has recently been noting in cases that juvenile guardianship is appropriate when the relationship of the parent-child is beneficial to the child. We don't have that here. We have zero relationship. Mr. Hamlin cites duress for not participating in parenting time, but we had no testimony someone held a gun to his head saying, if you come, we're going to write bad reports about you. That is duress. Duress is not an objective report on behaviors. That's simply an objective report. There have been numerous offerings to have conversations with Ms. Moore's office about expectations, about concerns, and whether those have been taken advantage of or not, that is not on the department. Again, that goes back to the parent. And so we request that the goal remain adoption for those 4 younger children, that this court suspend the parenting time pending the termination hearing, and that the reasonable efforts towards reunification are no longer required at this time. Thank you.
Comments, Ms. Berger?
None, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Wilhelm?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, it's our position that reasonable efforts have never been provided to Mr. Hamlin. As Ms. Thomas pointed out, for the first 9 months until, well, over a year, 13 months. In this case, we had a worker who exhibited active bias against Mr. Hamlin and against his case. And that went on for some time, and the court will recall that that review after review after review, we asked the court to change the worker, and finally we got a worker change. Now, since that time, there's still a question here. Reasonable efforts are more than handing people a list with some phone numbers on it and saying, call these. Reasonable efforts, you can't wait for parents to ask. The burden is not solely on the parents to try to ask and to know what they need. They probably, there's things they don't want, but they need. So if we wait for them to ask, they're never going, that rule would never help families be reunified or never help parents learn how to be better parents, that kind of a rule. And that's not the rule. The rule is that the efforts, they have to be active, that and especially when it's crucial services. So in this case, one thing I will point out is that Mr. Hamlin, that this case came about in the petitions, domestic violence is one of the primary reasons for why we are in this case today. And Mr. Hamlin's never, ever received a referral, not from his previous worker, not from this worker, for domestic violence help with that. And again, it's simply not a list, and here's a list, go follow up on it. Now, Ms. Hamlin, and to her credit, did provide a list, and an excellent list. And Mr. Hamlin did call all of those places. What he found was some of the places on that list, and this is in the record, it's in the social contact logs. Mr. Hamlin found that they were no longer doing those services. Now, as recently as I believe 5/1, if not 5/9, Mr. Hamlin again asked for some referrals for domestic violence. This has been a case that's gone on for almost 2 years, and never once has he been referred for domestic violence counseling. And Ms. Hamlin did say that they were addressing that in his counseling with Barb Brick, but then we established that, well, no, he's not. So that wasn't working either. And that's a crucial problem, and been a crucial problem in the case. And it's the problem that Ms. Hamlin says is the one that she's most worried about, because she's most worried that this recent separation won't last. Domestic violence is the crux of the case, yet there's not been any reasonable referrals of any kind for that. Also, there's a lack of responsiveness. He does need transportation. He does write, you'll see in the social contact logs, he asks for transportation lots because he needs it. He can't go to Ann Arbor, he's got no car. Okay, yes, this is his fault, but it is also part of reasonable efforts, and transportation is an issue to help with that. So he should at least get a response as to whether or not he's going to have help. Now, he did get a response today. He will have to give 48 hours notice, and he might get some gas cards to go visit Dr. Fountain. Great. We shouldn't have to come to court to get that. He should get that after he writes. And in this case, I also want to point out, a lot has been said about April 18th and that visit. I would point out for the court, easy to see, that the email that we're talking about here on 418, the one that changed the visitation so that there wouldn't be one on 418. I mean, it changed it. It was on 418 that email went out. And actually that email went out at 1:05. Mr. Hamlin has to confirm by noon. So when Mr. Hamlin wrote to confirm, it was only noon. And no, the email had not come out. So it wasn't a matter of he couldn't open the email. He opened it when it came out and he saw that. And furthermore, on that point, it's not his responsibility to notify everyone in the case that his visitation has been changed. That email went to everyone. Everyone knew that. But if you look in the social contact logs, you'll see that on April 20th, there was confusion by Ms. Heiss. Looks like she didn't realize it either, that visitation had been just canceled. No one was ever advised that it had just been canceled. It was on the earlier list of 324. It disappeared from the later list that came out 418. That's not his fault. And he did confirm for that. So there are visits that he could have had that he confirmed for, but didn't get. That's it. We are objecting to a finding of reasonable efforts in this case. To date, there haven't been reasonable efforts in this case for Mr. Hamlin. And we would ask the court to find that reasonable efforts have not been made. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. The court finds that all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review and permanency planning hearing. Ms. Heiss is certainly in satisfaction of her obligations as guardian ad litem. Thank you for your efforts. I do find that the testimony of our caseworker, as well as the documentation that was submitted to the court, does constitute reasonable efforts in this file. It reflects monitoring of the children and their services. We had just in the last review period 11 different appointments. These children are all being screened for different potential services, as well as monitored for existing conditions. And of course, all of the moving pieces of typical childhood, including dental appointments and doctor's appointments, and it's a very busy household. And it's certainly kept Ms. Stephanie Hamlin busy monitoring all of that. She's also made efforts to reach out to both parents to monitor their services, to figure out where they're living. The perfect example of that is when she described sitting with her supervisor and for the second time, trying to assist Mr. Hamlin in securing services through CMH, only to have him refuse those services because he refuses to agree to a treatment plan. Despite that, she soldiered on and forwarded him a bunch of information about other services and was willing to coordinate with him and reach out to Dr. Haugen on that. That all actually constitutes active efforts rather than reasonable efforts. Reasonable efforts are simply connecting a parent with services because, as Ms. Thomas pointed out, a parent has the obligation to take advantage of those services during the period of time available to them under the jurisdiction and supervision of the court. So that's just one of the many examples we heard about today, but it's a poignant example in this file. We also had continued examples of barriers that continue to exist for both parents, including evidence of alcohol intake as well as domestic violence incidents. We still don't have stable employment or housing for any significant period of time. We have, in fact, neither parent really effectively employed. We've had and lost jobs again for both of them in the last review period. Ms. Estes appears to have stabilized for the moment with her father, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward on that. I read your letter and your father's letter, and I'm glad you're in a good place at the moment, and I hope that continues forward. Hopefully, Mr. Hamlin will be able to find a job to avoid eviction and continue to work on taking advantage of those services. But I do not find that the department should have further obligation to provide reasonable efforts on those points. They have all the information that they could possibly want on those points. And so if either parent wants to take advantage of services in the next report period, feel free. And of course, report that back to Ms. Hamlin so that she can report that to me. But I will not require her to actively reach out and to continue those diligent efforts in connecting a parent with services. Those have been frustrating efforts, to put it mildly, especially around visitation and connecting these parents with services, only to have them disengage, move, not show up. And we can talk about individual incidences and have excuses on those and here and there, but the point is we needed both parents to be stable by this point and actively having benefited from services, not tripping over things in order to get into services in the first place still. So all of the barriers continue to exist and present a significant risk of harm associated with returning these children to the care of either parent at this time. I also find that it's appropriate to suspend visitation pending the resolution of the hearing on the petition to request termination of parental rights for all of the reasons that I've visited today, as well as many of the reasons that I visited in our last hearing. Those issues continue to be present in a very big way. And of course, we have the support of Ms. Renee Moore also indicating that there's a risk of mental harm and emotional harm to the children if they continue to have to attempt to be present for visits. We had behaviors documented around visits, as well as the lack of bond and the stress that it causes the children to be scheduled for visits that don't happen. So with her support, the support of our LGAL, the visits will be suspended pending determination trial, which is scheduled to be heard with our next review hearing as previously announced on July 17th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. We've reserved the afternoon for that. Children will remain in their placements, respective placements. Those are the safest and least restrictive places for each of them to be at this time, pending further resolution. And unless there's any questions, that will be all for today. And we'll see you back July 17th at 1:30.
Your Honor, there's a specific concern, visits suspended, does that include medical appointments and that kind of time, access to the children?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right,
Sure,
thank you
well,
all for your time and efforts. Oh, sorry, Ms. Berger, did you have a question?
Yes, will that include the virtual visits that are currently happening, or will that just include the in-person visits that were previously suspended?
That includes all visits, including virtual and contact with the children pending the outcome of the